Is there's a silent, ancient language that we all speak? Yes. It's a language not of words, but of clinking glasses, of shared plates, of quiet understanding across a table. It's the simple, profound act of breaking bread with another person. This ritual is as old as fire itself, a fundamental part of what makes us human. We gather, we share, we connect. From the earliest campfires where hunters divided their kill, to the grandest banquet halls of kings, the communal meal has always been more than just about sustenance. It's a ceremony, a confirmation of our bonds, a way of saying, we are in this together. This is the bedrock upon which our entire culture of dining is built, a foundation of trust and community that stretches back into the mists of time. Think about it. The most important moments of our lives are so often marked by a meal. We celebrate births and birthdays with cake and champagne. We seal business deals over lunch. We fall in love across a candlelit dinner. We mourn our losses with shared food that offers comfort when words fail. Why is this? Why does food, shared with others, hold such a powerful grip on our societies and our souls? It's because a shared table is a neutral ground, a place of truce and of celebration. It's where stories are told, where families are forged, and where the rich tapestry of our social lives is woven, one meal at a time. This pull is universal, crossing every border and every culture. In every corner of the globe, the invitation to eat is an invitation into someone's life. It is an act of profound hospitality and vulnerability. To offer food is to offer a piece of yourself, your heritage, your history, your home. And to accept that offer is to participate in a tradition that is both deeply personal and universally understood. It's a quiet acknowledgement of our shared humanity. Before there were menus, before there were chefs, before the word restaurant even existed, there was this fundamental urge to gather, to nourish, and to connect. It is a primal need that has driven us for millennia, shaping our cities, our economies, and our very identities in ways we rarely stop to consider. This documentary is a journey into the heart of that very human experience. We're going to explore why we, as a species, are so irresistibly drawn to eating out. It's a story that isn't just about food. It's about our search for connection, for novelty, for a sense of belonging in an ever-changing world. We'll travel through time, from the smoky taverns of ancient Rome to the gleaming Michelin-starred kitchens of today. We'll unpack the history of the restaurant, an institution that seems so modern yet has roots that run deeper than we can possibly imagine. This is the story of how we turned the basic need to eat into one of life's greatest pleasures. We use the word restaurant so casually, so frequently, that we've almost forgotten to ask what it truly means. Is it any place that serves you food for money? A simple roadside stall selling grilled meats in Bangkok? A bustling diner in a small American town? A formal, hushed temple of gastronomy in Paris? The answer, of course, is yes to all of the above. But the term itself has a very specific and fascinating origin. It comes from 18th century France, derived from the French verb restaurer, which means to restore. The first establishments to call themselves restaurants sold restorative broths, rich consommes intended to restore one's health and vigor. Simple broth plated fine dining. This original meaning tells us something profound. We aren't just looking to fill our stomachs. We are looking to be restored. Restored from the fatigue of a long day, restored from the monotony of our own kitchens, restored from the loneliness of eating by ourselves. A restaurant, in its purest form, is a place of refuge. It's a sanctuary where the burdens of cooking, serving, and cleaning are lifted from our shoulders. For the price of a meal, we are given the temporary luxury of being cared for. It's a space where we can focus solely on the pleasure of the food and the company of our companions. But the definition has expanded far beyond its humble origins. Today, a restaurant is a stage, lighting, music, decor, service. The chef is the director, the waiters are the actors, and we, the diners, are the audience, participating in a nightly drama of culinary creation. We go to restaurants not just to be fed, but to be entertained, to be surprised, to to be transported to another place or time. Each establishment tells a story of a specific region's cuisine, a chef's personal journey, or a particular moment in history. So, what is a restaurant? It is a place of business, certainly. It is a cornerstone of our economy and a provider of millions of jobs. It is a community center, a cultural institution, a laboratory for culinary innovation, a repository of our collective memory. From the simple food stands that have nourished travelers for centuries to the elaborate dining palaces that define luxury, all these places answer the same fundamental human need. They offer us a seat at the table, a moment of restoration, and a connection to the world beyond our own front door. The journey of public dining is a story of evolution, a slow and fascinating shift from pure necessity to a celebrated art form. For most of human history, eating outside the home was not a choice. It was a requirement born of circumstance. Travelers on long, arduous journeys, like the merchants traversing the Silk Road, relied on roadside inns, caravanserais for a hot meal and a safe place to rest. Their options were limited. The food was basic, and the primary goal was simple survival. In the dense, sprawling cities of the ancient world, like Rome, many citizens lived in crowded apartments, or insulae, that lacked private kitchens. For them, a trip to the local thermopolium, a sort of ancient fast food counter, was a daily necessity. These early establishments were practical, functional, devoid of glamour. They were social hubs, yes, but their purpose was overwhelmingly utilitarian. You ate what was available, often standing up or sitting on a simple stool. The menu, if you could call it that, was whatever had been prepared that day. There was little concept of choice, service, ambiance. These were places for workers, soldiers, travelers, people on the move who needed fuel to continue their journey or their labor. Dining was not yet an experience to be savored. It was a task to be completed, a means to an end, not an end in itself. The transformation began subtly, driven by the growth of cities, the rise of a merchant class with disposable income, and a newfound interest in the pleasures of life. In medieval Europe, guilds fraternities had their own halls where members would feast and conduct business. In the Islamic Golden Age, sophisticated cities like Baghdad, Damascus hosted establishments that offered a wider variety of refined dishes. Slowly but surely, the idea of eating in public began to shed its association with poverty or travel. It started to become a symbol of status, a way to display wealth and worldliness. The act of choosing what to eat, and with whom, began to take on a new social significance. It wasn't until 18th century Paris, however, that all the crucial ingredients came together to create the modern restaurant. The French Revolution played an unexpected role, displacing the private chefs who had worked for the aristocracy. These talented, newly unemployed culinary artists had to find a new clientele. They opened their own establishments, offering their refined skills to the public for the first time. They introduced printed menus, individual tables, a standard of service that was previously reserved for nobility. Suddenly, dining out became an aspirational act, a democratic form of luxury. The restaurant was no longer just a place to be fed. It was a place to experience an art form. This is the story we will embark on together. It is a sweeping chronicle that spans continents and millennia, tracing the evolution of one of our most beloved social rituals. Our journey will begin at the very origins of hospitality. In a time when the line between a private home and a public house was blurred, we will visit the boisterous taverns of ancient Rome, where wine flowed freely and politics were debated over simple plates of food. We will travel the legendary Silk Road, stopping at the inns that served as vital hubs of commerce and cultural exchange, places where a simple bowl of noodles could tell you more about a region than any map. From these ancient beginnings, our path will lead us to the cobblestone streets of 18th century Paris. Here, in the wake of a revolution that upended society, we will witness the birth of the restaurant as we know it. We will meet the first celebrity chefs and examine the first written menus, understanding how these innovations turned dining into a public spectacle and a symbol of a new bourgeois society. We'll see how the very idea of choosing one's own meal from a list of options was a radical concept, one that empowered the individual and democratized the pleasures of the table. This was the moment when the restaurant truly came into its own. Our narrative will then cross the Atlantic, following the wave of immigration that brought the world's cuisines to the shores of America. We'll explore how the Industrial Revolution, with its roaring factories and burgeoning cities, created a new need for public dining. We will ride the rails of the 19th century, discovering how grand hotel dining rooms and train car restaurants made travel glamorous. We'll settle into the cozy booths of early 20th century diners, the quintessential American eateries that offered a sense of community and comfort. From the Jazz-age cafes to the mid-century temples of fine dining, we'll see how restaurants became central characters in the story of modern life. Finally, we will arrive in our own time, a world where dining is more diverse, accessible, and complex than ever before. We'll explore the psychology of why eating out feels so good and how globalization has placed the world's flavors at our fingertips. We'll look at the modern landscape, from Michelin-starred kitchens pushing the boundaries of creativity to the vibrant street food scenes that are the heartbeat of so many cities. And we will look to the future, asking how this timeless institution is adapting to a world of new challenges. This is not just a history of restaurants. This is the history of us, our communities, our desires, and our unending quest to connect, one plate at a time. Long before the first city walls were raised, long before the first coin was minted, humanity's relationship with food was forged in the flickering light of a communal fire. For our earliest ancestors, the act of eating was inseparable from the act of gathering. The hunt was a collective effort, and so was the meal that followed. The hearth was the center of life, a source of warmth, a beacon of safety in a dangerous world, the first dining room. Here, around the flames, the day's catch or the harvest was cooked and distributed, a ritual that reinforced social bonds and ensured the survival of the group. Sharing food wasn't an act of charity. It was the very fabric of society, a practical system of mutual support. This primal scene is etched into our collective DNA. The principles established around that ancient fire, sharing, cooperation, community, are the bedrock upon which all future forms of hospitality would be built. The leader or elder who divided the food was not just distributing calories. They were affirming the structure of the tribe, acknowledging each member's place within it. To receive a share was to be recognized as part of the whole. This was not dining as a pleasure, but dining as a fundamental expression of belonging. It was here that food became more than fuel. It became a language of inclusion, a tool for building alliances and maintaining peace within the fragile ecosystem of early human society. The concept of a public dining space did not yet exist because the line between public and private life was almost non-existent. The entire clan or tribe functioned as a single household. However, the seeds of hospitality were sown in the interactions between different groups. When a traveler or a visiting band was welcomed to the fire and offered a share of the meal, it was a profound gesture of trust and peacemaking. This act of offering food to a stranger, of temporarily bringing an outsider into the circle of community, was perhaps the first, most basic form of what we would one day call a restaurant. It was an exchange rooted in the understanding that we are all, at times, vulnerable and in need of sustenance. As societies grew and agriculture took hold, these traditions evolved, but did not disappear. The harvest festival became the new communal feast, a celebration of bounty and a reinforcement of community ties after a season of hard labor. In these large-scale gatherings, the ancient ritual of the shared meal was magnified, becoming a cornerstone of cultural identity. The food was more plentiful, the preparations more elaborate, but the underlying purpose remained the same: to bring people together, to reaffirm their shared identity, and to celebrate their collective survival. This ancient impulse to share nourishment is the deep ancestral root from which all subsequent houses of hospitality would eventually grow, a timeless tradition of gathering around a common table. As we journey forward in time, our story brings us to the crowded, chaotic, and incredibly sophisticated streets of the Roman Empire. In a city like Rome, or in the remarkably preserved ruins of Pompeii, we find one of the first true ancestors of the modern fast food restaurant, the Thermopolium. The name literally means a place where something hot is sold, and that is precisely what it was. These were small, often cramped establishments that opened directly onto the street, catering to the masses of urban Romans who lived in multi-story apartment blocks called insulae. Most of these apartments lacked private kitchens, making the thermopolium an essential part of daily life for the working class, the poor, and anyone simply out and about in the bustling city. Imagine walking down a busy Roman street. The air is thick with the sounds of commerce and the smells of cooking food. You approach a thermopolium, recognizable by its distinctive L-shaped masonry counter with large earthenware jars called dolia sunk into its surface. These jars held the day's offerings: hot lentils, savory stews, coarse bread, cheese, olives, and spiced wine. There were no printed menus, no tables with chairs. You would simply point to what you wanted, pay your coin, eat right there at the counter, or take your meal with you. It was quick, convenient, and catered to a population on the move, a concept remarkably familiar to our 21st century sensibilities. These establishments were not places of leisure or fine dining. They were functional, utilitarian, and generally held in low esteem by the Roman elite, who could afford to cook and entertain in their lavish private villas. Writers like Juvenal often portrayed them as grimy, disreputable places frequented by the lower classes, drunkards, and criminals. Yet, for hundreds of thousands of ordinary Romans, they were indispensable. The thermopolium was the neighborhood kitchen, a place to get a warm, nourishing meal without the need for a stove or the time to cook. They represent a pivotal moment in dining history, the first large-scale commercialization of food service to meet the demands of a dense urban population. The legacy of the thermopolium is profound. It demonstrates that the need for convenient, ready-to-eat food is not a modern phenomenon, but an ancient urban reality. It was a business model born of necessity, shaped by the architecture and social structure of the Roman city. While they lacked the restorative mission of the later Parisian restaurants, they fulfilled an equally important function. They fed the city. They kept the wheels of the empire turning by providing the fuel for its massive workforce. In these humble street-side counters, we see the first clear blueprint for a food service industry, designed not for the traveling few, but for the settled masses, a crucial step in the journey of why we eat out. While the thermopolium catered to the need for a quick meal, another Roman institution served a different, though equally important, social purpose: the taberna. More akin to a tavern or a wine bar, the taberna was a ubiquitous feature of Roman life, a place where people could gather to drink, socialize, unwind. Unlike the grab-and-go nature of the thermopolium, the taberna invited patrons to linger. Here, the primary product was wine, often served in different grades and qualities, alongside simple snacks like bread, cheese, cured meats. It was the Roman equivalent of the local pub, a cornerstone of neighborhood social life for those not part of the aristocratic elite. The atmosphere in a taberna would have been lively, noisy, sometimes rowdy. They were places for conversation, for gambling with dice, a favorite Roman pastime, and for debating the politics of the day. For the common citizen, who had little access to exclusive forums, the taberna was a space to voice opinions, exchange news, and feel a sense of connection to the wider community. It was a melting pot where soldiers, merchants, craftsmen, and laborers could mingle, united by a shared cup of wine. The taberna was less about sustenance and more about social lubrication, a place to escape the confines of a small apartment and the pressures of daily work. The Roman authorities often viewed tabernae with suspicion, seeing them as potential hotbeds for dissent and disorder. They were places where plots could be hatched and popular sentiment could turn against the ruling powers. Yet, their very ubiquity proves how essential they were to the social fabric of the empire. Emperors and local magistrates might attempt to regulate them, controlling their opening hours or banning certain activities, but they could never stamp them out. The human need for a third place, a social environment separate from home and work, was simply too powerful. The taberna fulfilled this need perfectly, offering a public living room for the masses. In the DNA of the taberna, we can trace the lineage of countless future establishments. From the medieval alehouse to the modern-day bar, the core function remains strikingly similar: to provide a space for community, conversation, and libation. It was a commercial enterprise, to be sure, but its value was measured in more than just the amount of wine sold. It was measured in the social bonds it fostered and the sense of belonging it provided. The Taberna firmly established the idea that a public house could be a vital center of social and political life. A place where you went not just to quench your thirst, but to engage with the world around you. A foundational concept in the long history of public gathering places. Section 4. A taste of the divine. Temples, rituals, and feasting. Beyond the commercial hustle of the Thermopolium and the Taberna, there was another, far more ancient tradition of public eating tied to the sacred. Across civilizations, the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, the Mesopotamians' temples were not just places of quiet worship. They were centers of grand communal feasts. Religious festivals were almost always marked by animal sacrifice, a central rite in which a portion of the animal was offered to the gods, while the vast majority of the meat was cooked and distributed among the worshippers. This practice transformed the temple precinct into a massive open-air dining hall, where an entire community could share in a sacred meal. This form of public dining was imbued with deep spiritual significance. To partake in the meat of a sacrificed animal was to commune with the divine, to strengthen one's bond with the gods and with the religious community. These feasts were highly organized events, often funded by the state or wealthy patrons, and they served a crucial social function. For many ordinary people, these festivals might be the only time they would eat meat all year, making it a highly anticipated culinary event. It was a tangible benefit of religious participation, a way for the temple to provide for its followers both spiritually and physically, reinforcing its central role in society. These sacred feasts were profoundly different from the commercial dining we have seen. The food was not, strictly speaking, for sale, though offerings and donations were expected. The menu was fixed, determined by the type of animal deemed appropriate for the god being honored. The primary purpose was not commerce or convenience, but ritual communion and social cohesion. It was an act that bound the community together under the watchful eyes of their deities. In ancient Greece, after the sacrifices at the Panathenaic Games, the meat from hundreds of cattle was distributed and cooked, feeding thousands of citizens in a massive public banquet that affirmed their shared Athenian identity. This connection between food and faith highlights a powerful, recurring theme that sharing a meal can be a transcendent experience. While the religious context has faded for many, the idea that a meal can be something more than mere sustenance persists. We still speak of the Holy Trinity of Cajun cooking or describe a perfect dish as divine. And, well, these temple feasts remind us that for much of history, eating in a group was an act steeped in meaning, a ritual that connected the mundane to the metaphysical. It was in these sacred spaces that the power of a shared meal to unite, to sanctify, and to create collective identity was demonstrated on the grandest possible scale. Section 5. Along the Silk Road, the Caravanserai. Let us now turn our gaze eastward to the vast and arid landscapes of Central Asia, traversed by one of the most legendary trade networks in history, the Silk Road. For centuries it connected east and west, a conduit for silk, spices, and ideas. For the merchants, pilgrims, soldiers, and emissaries, survival depended on roadside inns called caravanserais. These were not mere rest stops. They were formidable fortresses of hospitality. Strategically placed about a day's journey apart, they offered protection from bandits and the elements. Inside thick, high walls, a weary traveler could find a safe haven for the night. Upon entering, a merchant would find a large central courtyard, often with a well or cistern at its center, where they could water their camels and horses. Around the courtyard were dozens of small, unfurnished alcoves or rooms for travelers, as well as storerooms for their valuable cargo. Crucially, every caravanserai had a communal kitchen or designated areas for cooking. While some travelers prepared their own food, many relied on the innkeeper to provide a simple, hot meal, a hearty stew, flatbread, and tea. This was dining born of pure necessity, a vital service that made long-distance trade possible. The Caravanserai was a remarkable melting pot of cultures: a Chinese silk merchant, a Persian glassmaker, a Buddhist monk, a Nestorian Christian priest, a Sogdian trader. The dining area was a hub of exchange: goods, languages, customs, and stories. The food itself was often a fusion, reflecting the diverse origins of its patrons and local ingredients. A simple bowl of noodles could tell a story of cultural transmission. These inns were the vibrant, multicultural nerve centers of the ancient world's globalized economy. The Caravanserai represents a crucial evolution in the history of hospitality. It was an institution designed specifically for the traveler, often state-sponsored due to its importance for trade and communication. It provided the three essential pillars of hospitality: food, lodging, and security. While the accommodations were Spartan and the food was simple, the service they provided was indispensable. The legacy of the Caravanserai echoes in the modern motel and the roadside service station, but its true importance lies in its role as a crucible of cultural interaction. It was a place where the world met, one meal at a time, in the middle of nowhere. Section 6. China's Urban Oases, the tea houses of the Tang Dynasty. While Europe was navigating the so-called Dark Ages, a vibrant and sophisticated urban culture was flourishing in China under the Tang Dynasty, from the 7th to the 10th century. The capital city, Chang'an, was the largest and most cosmopolitan city in the world, a bustling metropolis of merchants, officials, scholars, and artists. And at the heart of its social life was an institution that was far more than just a place to drink: the tea house. As tea cultivation and consumption spread throughout China, tea houses emerged as essential public spaces. They served a role similar to the coffee houses that would appear in Europe 1,000 years later. These tea houses were centers of social life, entertainment, and information. They ranged from simple, rustic establishments for commoners to lavish, ornate pavilions for the wealthy elite. Inside, people would gather not only to sip the increasingly fashionable beverage, but to conduct business, negotiate contracts, catch up on gossip, and debate poetry and politics. They were places to see and be seen. Professional storytellers would recite epic tales, musicians would play traditional instruments, and singers would perform the latest popular songs. The tea house was a stage for culture, a place where news traveled faster than any official decree. Food was an integral part of the tea house experience. Alongside carefully prepared teas, these establishments served snacks and light meals, which would eventually evolve into the tradition of dim sum: steamed buns, savory dumplings, and sweet pastries, as patrons enjoyed entertainment or conversation. This pairing of drink and food in a leisurely social setting was a significant development. It moved public dining away from the purely functional Roman thermopolium and toward a more recreational, experience-driven model. People came to tea houses not just because they were hungry or thirsty, but for the pleasure of the experience itself. The tea houses of the Tang Dynasty represent a critical turning point. They were perhaps the first public establishments where ambiance and entertainment were as important as the items being sold. They cultivated a specific atmosphere, offering a refined escape from the hustle and bustle of the city. They catered to a new kind of customer, one with leisure time and disposable income, who sought not just sustenance, but also aesthetic pleasure and social engagement. In these elegant urban oases, we see the birth of the idea that a public house could be a destination in its own right, a place of cultivated leisure and cultural consumption, a concept that would become central to the modern restaurant. If the Tang Dynasty laid the groundwork, it was during the subsequent Song Dynasty, from the 10th to the 13th century, that China experienced a true restaurant revolution. This period saw unprecedented economic growth, urbanization, and a flourishing merchant class. The capital cities of Kaifeng and later Hangzhou became immense, bustling centers of commerce, with populations exceeding 1 million people. This concentration of wealth and people created a massive demand for public dining, leading to the emergence of a restaurant industry that was astonishingly diverse and sophisticated, in many ways foreshadowing the dining scenes of modern cities. Written accounts from the period, such as the Dongjing Menghua Lu, describe Kaifeng's dizzying array of eating establishments. There were noodle shops, dumpling houses, and specialized eateries that focused on a single type of food, such as honey-fried pastries or blood soup. More significantly, there were large, opulent restaurants with extensive menus that catered to the wealthy. These establishments offered a wide range of regional cuisines, from Sichuan and Hebei to Guangdong. This was a radical innovation, the idea that a single restaurant could offer a culinary tour of an entire country. These Song Dynasty restaurants were highly organized businesses. They employed specialized staff, with waiters who would take orders, sometimes using a form of coded language or song to relay them to the kitchen, and chefs who specialized in different cooking techniques. Menus, sometimes written for patrons to peruse, listed dozens, if not hundreds, of dishes. There were different restaurants for different occasions and social classes. Some were known for their raucous atmosphere with singing girls and performers, while others offered quiet, private rooms for more intimate gatherings or business meetings. It was a mature, competitive, and highly segmented market. The culinary culture of Song Dynasty China was, in many respects, centuries ahead of its time. It possessed nearly all the key elements we associate with modern restaurants: extensive menus, specialized cuisine, professional service, and a focus on ambiance and customer experience. It demonstrated that a thriving urban economy naturally gives rise to a sophisticated dining culture. Why did this happen? Because a city full of strangers, many of whom were far from home, created a need for places that could provide not just food, but a taste of home, a novel experience, or a neutral ground for social and business transactions. This was, without a doubt, the most advanced restaurant culture in the world before 18th century Paris. It was really quite remarkable. During the Islamic Golden Age, from the 8th to the 13th centuries, Baghdad, Damascus, and Cordoba became dazzling centers of science, culture, and commerce. This world was bound together by a common language, Arabic, and a shared faith, Islam, which placed a strong emphasis on hospitality. The Quran and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad encouraged the generous treatment of travelers, guests, and the poor. This religious and cultural imperative fostered a sophisticated culture of public eating and food provision that was woven into the very fabric of urban life in the medieval Islamic world. In the sprawling cities of the Abbasid and Umayyad caliphates, a rich culinary tradition flourished. Cookbooks from the period, like the 10th century Kitab al-Tabikh from Baghdad, reveal a cuisine of incredible complexity and refinement, blending Persian influences, Arab influences, and Indian influences. While much of this fine dining took place in the private palaces of the caliphs and the wealthy, elements of it trickled down to the public sphere. Bustling urban markets, or souks, were filled with street vendors selling grilled kebabs, savory stews cooked in large cauldrons, fried pastries soaked in honey, and refreshing fruit sherbets. These souks were the vibrant stomach of the city. For the artisan, the merchant, or the traveler, they offered a convenient and affordable way to eat. One could assemble a delicious and varied meal by visiting several different stalls. Beyond the markets, cities also had cookshops that offered more substantial dishes. Furthermore, the Islamic tradition of the waqf, or charitable endowment, led to the establishment of public kitchens associated with mosques, hospitals, and Sufi lodges. These institutions provided free food to the poor, students, and pilgrims, institutionalizing the principle of hospitality on a massive scale and ensuring a social safety net for the hungry. The culinary world of the Islamic Golden Age was a testament to the power of trade and cultural exchange. New ingredients like sugar, rice, spinach, and citrus fruits, introduced through trade routes, were quickly integrated into the cuisine, creating a dynamic and ever-evolving culinary landscape. The emphasis was on complex spice blends, contrasting sweet and sour flavors, and elaborate presentation. While they may not have had restaurants in the modern sense of sit-down establishments with menus, the cities of the Islamic world offered an incredibly rich and diverse public food culture, one that combined commercial enterprise with a deep-seated ethical duty of hospitality, feeding both body and soul. Well, it really fed everything. As we return to medieval Europe, we find a society that is largely rural and feudal. Long-distance travel was difficult and dangerous, undertaken mostly by a specific few: merchants, messengers, soldiers, and religious pilgrims. For these travelers, the road was a lonely and perilous place. The primary institution that offered them shelter and a hot meal was the inn or tavern. These establishments were often located along pilgrimage routes, like the Way of St. James to Santiago de Compostela, or in busy market towns, vital nodes in a sparse travel network. The medieval inn was a far cry from a modern hotel. Accommodations were rudimentary. Travelers shared beds in communal dormitories. The atmosphere was rough and ready. The central feature, the common room with a roaring fire where guests gathered to eat, drink, and seek warmth. There was no menu, no choice. Patrons were served the table d'hôte, a single fixed meal shared by all, including the innkeeper and family. You ate what was put in front of you, or you went hungry. Food was simple and hearty to fuel the next day. It typically included a pottage of grains, vegetables, and scraps of meat, with dark bread, ale, or rough wine. Quality varied. Innkeepers sometimes cheated, watering down ale or serving questionable meat. Still, inns were indispensable. They offered a bubble of safety and community. Pilgrims and merchants exchanged stories in the common room, creating fleeting connections on the open road. The inn, like the caravanserai, functioned as a refuge. Its aim was basic hospitality: food, drink, and shelter. It reinforced guests as temporary parts of the host household. The shared, no-choice meal model dominated public dining for centuries. Only deep social and economic change would create individual choice and the modern restaurant. So yeah, that change would come much later. Section 10. Guild halls and alehouses, the seeds of European public dining. Alongside the traveler's inn, other forms of public eating and drinking were taking root. One of the most important was the guild hall. Guilds were powerful associations of craftsmen and merchants, bakers, weavers, goldsmiths, who controlled the practice of their trade in a particular town. Their halls were not just administrative centers, they were the heart of the guild's social life. Here, members would hold meetings, initiate new apprentices, and, crucially, host elaborate banquets and feasts. These meals were private affairs for members only, but instrumental in cultivating a taste for fine food and wine among the urban upper middle class. These guild feasts were displays of collective wealth and status. The menus were far more sophisticated than the simple pottage of the roadside inn, featuring multiple courses of roasted meats, savory pies, and expensive imported spices. These events established a clear link between food, status, and professional identity. At the same time, on the streets outside the exclusive guild halls, a more humble and widespread institution was thriving: the alehouse. In England and across Northern Europe, the alehouse was the social hub for the common person. It was typically run by a woman, an alewife, who brewed her own ale and sold it from her home, creating a de facto public house. The primary function of the alehouse was, of course, to sell drink, but they also became vital community centers. They were places for neighbors to gather, exchange news, play games, and relax after a hard day's labor. While they rarely served full meals, simple food like bread, cheese, and pickled eggs was often available to accompany the drink. Like the Roman taberna, the alehouse was a third place, essential to the social fabric of the community. It was a space owned by the public, not by the church or the Lord, and thus offered a degree of freedom and autonomy that was rare in the rigidly hierarchical society of the time. Together, the guild hall and the alehouse represent two diverging paths of public dining emerging in pre-modern Europe. The guild hall pointed towards exclusive, high-end dining, food as sophistication and wealth. The alehouse, along with its continental cousin, the tavern, laid the foundation for a more democratic, accessible culture of public drinking and socializing. Both were essential precursors to the restaurant. They helped establish the habit of spending money on food and drink outside the home, creating distinct social spaces for consumption, and setting the stage for the revolutionary changes just around the corner in 18th century Paris. Section 1. Paris, 1765. A restorative broth. Our story now arrives at a pivotal moment in a city on the cusp of profound transformation, mid-18th century Paris. Before this time, if you wanted a meal in public, your options were limited. You could go to an inn or a tavern where you'd be served a boisterous shared meal at a common table. Or you could visit a traiteur, a caterer, who sold parts of roasted meats and stews, which you would typically take away. There was no refined, quiet place where an individual could simply sit down, order a light meal of their own choosing, and dine in peace. This was the world before the restaurant. Then, around 1765, a Parisian shopkeeper named Mathurin Rose de Chantoiseau opened an establishment of a new and different kind. He was not a caterer or an innkeeper. His business was founded on a modern, health-conscious concept. He sold what he called restaurants, a word that at the time referred to rich, restorative broths and consommé, derived from the verb restaurer, meaning to restore. These broths were believed to restore one's health and energy, particularly for those with delicate constitutions who found the heavy, greasy fare of the taverns unappealing. His shop was a clean, elegant, and quiet space, a stark contrast to the rowdy public houses of the era. The sign above Chantoiseau's door reportedly quoted a verse from the Gospel of Matthew, which in Latin read, "Venite ad me omnes qui stomacho laboratis et ego vos restaurabo." This translates to, "Come to me, all you whose stomachs are in distress, and I will restore you." This was not just a clever marketing slogan. It was a mission statement. It repositioned the act of eating out from a boisterous social necessity to a refined, personal act of self-care. It offered a sanctuary from the noise of the city, a place where one could be attended to with decorum and served a product designed for their individual well-being. It was a simple idea, but, well, it was revolutionary. Chantoiseau's innovation was not just the broth itself, but the context in which it was served. He offered his customers separate tables, a practice unheard of at the time. This simple act of separating diners created a sense of privacy and personal space. It shifted the focus from the communal group to the individual patron. Other innovators, like a man known as Boulanger, are also credited with similar ventures around the same time, famously adding sheep's feet in a white sauce to his menu of restoratives. Whoever was truly first, the idea quickly caught on. A new type of establishment was born, one that promised not just a meal, but a restoration of body and spirit. The revolutionary spark, chefs without a court. The seed planted by Chantoiseau and his contemporaries might have remained a niche novelty were it not for a cataclysmic event that would shatter French society and create the perfect conditions for the restaurant to blossom. The French Revolution of 1789 was more than a political upheaval. It was a complete restructuring of the social order. For centuries, the pinnacle of French culinary art had been hidden away from public view, sequestered within the great aristocratic houses of Paris and Versailles. The best chefs in the country were in the private employ of nobles, dukes, and princes, their immense talents dedicated solely to pleasing the palates of their wealthy patrons. When the revolution came, it swept away this entire system. The aristocracy was dismantled. Nobles fled the country, were imprisoned, or met their fate at the guillotine. Suddenly, the great private kitchens fell silent. An entire class of highly skilled, incredibly talented chefs, maîtres d'hôtel, and other culinary professionals found themselves unemployed, their patrons gone, their world turned upside down. They possessed a deep knowledge of haute cuisine, the intricate, sophisticated style of cooking previously reserved for the elite, but they no longer had an audience. These artisans were faced with a choice: abandon their craft or find a new way to practice it. Many chose the latter. They took their formidable skills and opened their own establishments for the public. This was the great catalyst. These newly public chefs brought the elaborate techniques, the complex sauces, and the refined presentation and high standards of aristocratic dining to the paying citizenry. For the first time, an ordinary person with sufficient funds could experience a level of culinary artistry that had once been the exclusive privilege of a king. The restaurant became the great democratizer of gastronomy. It took the art form of the palace and put it on the public stage, transforming a private luxury into a commercial enterprise accessible to the emerging bourgeois class. This influx of talent elevated the restaurant from a simple broth shop into a temple of fine dining. Antoine Beauvillier, former chef to the future King Louis XVIII, opened the Grande Taverne de Londres in 1782, often considered the first truly grand restaurant in Paris. He combined four elements that would become the standard: an elegant room, smartly dressed waiters, a well-stocked wine cellar, and most importantly, a superior style of cooking. The revolution accelerated this trend exponentially, releasing a flood of culinary masters onto the streets of Paris, each one eager to make a name for themselves and redefine the art of eating out. The new Parisian restaurant was not just a revolution in food, it was a revolution in the very experience of dining. Three key innovations came together to define this new institution: the private table, the written menu, and the principle of choice. Before the restaurant, the table d'hôte system reigned supreme. Long communal table, fixed time, fixed meal served by the host. There was no personal selection, no private conversation. The new restaurants introduced small, individual tables. This simple piece of furniture created a personal sphere, allowing for intimate conversation and a sense of exclusivity. This shift from the communal to the individual was profound. Dining was no longer a public free-for-all, but a private performance. At their own table, patrons became the masters of their own experience. This new sense of control was amplified by the second great innovation: the menu. Instead of being told what they would eat, customers were now presented with a list of available dishes, complete with prices. The first menus were often chalkboards on the wall, but they soon evolved into the printed cards we know today. Close-up of a recreated 19th century Parisian menu in calligraphy. This was a radical transfer of power from the host to the guest. It introduced the thrill of selection, of composing one's own meal according to personal taste and budget. The menu transformed the diner from a passive recipient into an active consumer. It was a catalog of possibilities, a script from which the meal could be constructed. Reading a menu became a new urban skill, a moment of delicious anticipation and decision-making. Would it be the potage, the roasted fowl, or the delicate fish? The red wine or the white? This freedom to choose was a powerful reflection of the new, post-revolutionary ideals of individual liberty and merit. It suggested that in this new world, your tastes mattered. You were no longer just a mouth to feed in a crowd. You were a discerning patron, a connoisseur in the making. These elements, the table, the menu, and the power of choice, worked together to create an entirely new grammar of public dining. The restaurant became a space where individuals could assert their identity and status through their selections. It introduced a new rhythm to the meal, with distinct courses ordered and served sequentially, rather than placed on the table all at once. This structured, personalized, and leisurely experience was a world away from the hasty, communal meals of the past. It was sophisticated, it was modern, and it established the fundamental blueprint for restaurant dining that would endure for the next 2 centuries. As the restaurant culture of Paris flourished in the early 19th century, it gave rise to a new kind of artist: the celebrity chef. The first and perhaps greatest of these was Marie-Antoine Carême. Hailing from a humble background, Carême rose through the ranks of Parisian patisseries, before becoming the chef for the powerful statesman Talleyrand, and later serving the Prince Regent in England, then Tsar Alexander I of Russia. Carême was not just a cook. He was a culinary architect, an author, and a theorist who codified French haute cuisine. Carême is famous for his extravagant pieces montées, enormous architectural constructions made of sugar, pastry, and marzipan, often recreating classical temples or Turkish mosques. These were the centerpieces of grand banquets, dazzling displays that elevated food to high art. His more lasting contribution was a systematic approach to cooking. He classified hundreds of French sauces into 4 mother sauces: Espagnole, Velouté, Allemande, and Béchamel. This brought logic and structure to the chaotic professional kitchen. Carême documented his system in influential cookbooks like L'Art de la Cuisine Française. These manuals trained a new generation of professional chefs. He treated cooking as a science and as an art form, meticulously detailing technique and principle. By publishing, CARêME transformed the chef from domestic servant into respected professional and public intellectual. He claimed cooking was equal to painting and to architecture, and through his career, he proved it. He was the original king of chefs and chef of kings. The rise of chefs like CARêME cemented restaurants as places of high culture. People flocked to taste the master's work. The chef's name became a brand, a guarantee of quality and innovation. A cult of personality around culinary creators was born and continues today. CARêME's legacy made the meal a profound aesthetic experience. He laid the foundation for modern gastronomy. As the 19th century drew to a close, the restaurant kitchen was still a place of creative, but often chaotic, energy. It took another culinary giant to bring true order and efficiency to the professional kitchen. Auguste Escoffier, working in the grand hotels of London and Paris at the turn of the 20th century, is credited with modernizing and rationalizing French cuisine in a way that made the high-volume, high-quality restaurant possible. He simplified the elaborate recipes of CARêME, focusing on lighter sauces and emphasizing the natural flavor of the ingredients. But his most revolutionary contribution was the invention of the kitchen brigade system. Escoffier organized the professional kitchen into a rigid hierarchy, modeled on a military brigade. Each chef had a specific, defined role. The saucier was in charge of all sauces, the poissonnier handled fish, the rôtisseur managed the roasts, and the pâtissier was responsible for desserts. At the top was the chef de cuisine, the executive chef, who directed the entire operation. This system, known as the brigade de cuisine, broke down the complex process of creating a dish into a series of precise, repeatable tasks. It was an assembly line for haute cuisine, ensuring consistency, speed, and quality, even during the busiest service. This system professionalized the kitchen to an unprecedented degree. It created a clear career path for aspiring chefs and established a common language and structure for kitchens all over the world. Escoffier's seminal book, Le Guide Culinaire, published in 1903, became the definitive Bible of French cooking. It contained over 5,000 recipes and was a comprehensive guide to the techniques, ingredients, and organization of the modern kitchen. If CARêME was the artist who elevated cuisine, Escoffier was the engineer who made that art scalable and consistent, creating the operational blueprint for the modern fine dining restaurant. At the same time that Escoffier was organizing the kitchen from within, another French innovation began to organize the restaurant world from the outside: the Michelin Guide. First published in 1900 by the Michelin Tire Company, it was initially a guide for French motorists, designed to encourage them to travel more and thus buy more tires. It included maps, instructions for repairing tires, and a list of hotels and restaurants. In 1926, the guide began awarding a single star to fine dining establishments. By the 1930s, the hierarchy of 0, 1, 2, and 3 stars was established. This simple rating system had a monumental impact, creating a new gold standard for culinary excellence and turning chefs into star-seeking competitors. As the 19th century dawned, revolutionary ideas born in Parisian restaurants were carried across the world on the currents of a new, powerful force: the Industrial Revolution. Steam power, factories, and railways. Millions were pulled from the familiar rhythms of rural life into the chaotic, burgeoning cities. This mass migration created an unprecedented urban workforce, a population detached from the land and the household kitchens that had sustained them for generations. These new city dwellers needed to be fed, and the old models of dining were simply not enough. This new urban reality created a massive, captive audience for public dining. Factory workers, clerks, and laborers toiled for long hours, often far from their lodgings, which were themselves frequently cramped and lacking proper cooking facilities. The midday meal, once taken at home, became a logistical problem. This gave rise to a host of new, practical eateries designed to provide quick, cheap, and hearty food for the working masses: canteens, pie shops, and simple cookshops. This was not fine dining. It was functional eating, a direct response to the new cadence of industrial life. The Industrial Revolution did more than just create a demand for restaurants. It also provided the means to supply them. The expansion of railways and steamships made it possible to transport fresh ingredients into city centers from ever greater distances. Fish from the coast, beef from Scotland, and vegetables from the countryside. This revolution in logistics broke the total reliance on local, seasonal produce, vastly expanding the potential repertoire of urban kitchens and laying the groundwork for a more diverse and consistent dining experience. This period forged a new relationship between work and food. Eating out was no longer solely the domain of the traveler or the aristocrat. It became a daily necessity for a significant portion of the population. The factory whistle, not the church bell, now dictated mealtimes for many. This fundamental shift created a vast, tiered market for dining, ranging from the opulent restaurants of the rich to the humble establishments that fueled the engines of industry. The city itself had developed a new kind of hunger, and the restaurant, in all its emerging forms, was there to satisfy it. While Paris was cultivating the art of haute cuisine, London was developing its own distinct and robust dining culture, rooted in British traditions and tastes. The quintessential London establishment of the 19th century was the chop house. These were distinctly masculine domains, catering to the city's merchants, lawyers, and businessmen. The atmosphere was clubby and convivial, but the focus was squarely on the food, plainly cooked, high-quality cuts of meat. Patrons would enter and see the day's chops, steaks, and kidneys displayed, choosing their cut before it was cooked to order on an open grill. The chop house was the antithesis of the elaborate French restaurant. There were no complex sauces or fancy names. The menu was simple, direct, and unapologetically British, celebrating the quality of the raw ingredient. Dishes like grilled mutton chops, porterhouse steaks, and steak and kidney pie were served with simple accompaniments like potatoes and bread. This was food designed to be substantial and satisfying, a hearty meal for a man of business. The service was brisk and efficient, and diners often sat in wooden booths or boxes that offered a degree of privacy for conversation and deal-making. As the century progressed and the Victorian middle class grew in size and confidence, a more refined style of dining emerged in the form of grand dining rooms. These were often found within gentlemen's clubs or as standalone establishments, offering a more formal experience than the chop house. While they borrowed elements from the French model, such as written menus and a wider selection of dishes, the cuisine often remained staunchly British. These dining rooms were symbols of Victorian prosperity and propriety, places where the burgeoning middle class could enjoy a taste of the aristocratic lifestyle, complete with starched linens and attentive service. These British institutions demonstrate how the Parisian restaurant model was not simply copied, but adapted to fit local culture and tastes. The chop house, with its focus on prime cuts of meat and a no-nonsense approach, reflected a different set of values. A celebration of commerce, tradition, and solid, unpretentious quality. It established London as a great dining city in its own right, not as a replica of Paris, but as a confident purveyor of its own culinary identity. This pattern of adaptation would be repeated again and again as the restaurant concept spread across the globe, each culture infusing the basic model with its own unique flavor. The dawn of the 20th century accelerated the pace of life, but it was the end of the First World War that truly uncorked a new, frenetic energy. The Roaring Twenties was an age of rebellion, exuberance, and social change. Hemlines rose, fortunes were made, and jazz became the soundtrack to a generation living life to the fullest. In America, one law defined the era: prohibition. The nationwide ban on alcohol production and sale was meant to sober the country, but it paradoxically created a clandestine dining and drinking scene, the speakeasy. Hidden behind unmarked doors, in basements, and behind false storefronts, thousands of speakeasies flourished. To gain entry, one needed a password or a connection, adding an illicit thrill to a night out. These secret spots became the crucibles of modern nightlife. For the first time, different social classes mingled freely. Flappers danced alongside gangsters, stockbrokers rubbed elbows with artists. Speakeasies were revolutionary social spaces for women, empowered by the right to vote, drinking and socializing publicly alongside men, shattering Victorian conventions. Food was often an afterthought, simple fare to soak up illegal booze. Shrimp cocktail, chicken a la king, and Caesar salad. Easy to prepare in makeshift kitchens, the dishes still felt indulgent. The real star was the cocktail. Bartenders became creative chemists, mixing potent bootleg gin and whiskey with juices, syrups, and bitters. Classics were born. The bee's knees, the French 75, the sidecar, and the cocktail bar became central to the night out. The speakeasy's legacy fused dining with entertainment, turning the night out into a mix of drinks, food, music, and dancing. It made going out glamorous, risky, and exciting. When Prohibition was repealed in 1933, that culture didn't vanish. It moved into the open, giving rise to supper clubs and nightclubs that kept the heady mix of dining and diversion. The speakeasy taught a generation to see restaurants not just as places to eat, but as destinations for nighttime adventure. While speakeasies catered to the nocturnal whims of the city, another, more wholesome institution was becoming the quintessential American eatery. The diner began its life in the late 19th century as a horse-drawn lunch wagon, a mobile kitchen serving simple, hot food to factory workers and night shift employees. These early wagons were practical, no-frills operations. But as the 20th century progressed, and especially after the Great Depression, the diner evolved into a stationary prefabricated building, a gleaming castle of chrome, stainless steel, and terrazzo floors, becoming a permanent and beloved fixture on the American roadside. The diner was a temple of democratic dining. Inside, in a cozy booth or perched on a stool at the long counter, a truck driver, a traveling salesman, a local family, and the town mayor could all sit side by side, enjoying the same simple, well-cooked food. The menu was a testament to comfort and familiarity. Meatloaf, pot roast, hamburgers, all-day breakfast, towering slices of pie, all washed down with endless cups of coffee. The food was fast, affordable, and deeply comforting, a reliable taste of home for a nation constantly on the move. The open kitchen, with its short-order cook performing a ballet of flying spatulas, added to the theatricality and honesty of the experience. These prefabricated structures, often built in factories in New Jersey and shipped across the country, were icons of industrial optimism and modern design. Their streamlined Art Deco and Googie-style architecture, with its curved corners, large plate glass windows, and vibrant neon signs, was designed to be eye-catching and inviting, a welcoming beacon for the weary traveler. The diner was a symbol of American efficiency and ingenuity, a clean, bright, and dependable oasis in a rapidly changing world. It was a place of community, where the waitress knew your name and your usual order. More than just a place to eat, the diner became a cornerstone of American culture. It was the setting for first dates, late-night conversations, and post-game celebrations. It represented a specific set of values: hard work, unpretentious quality, and a sense of community. It was a neutral ground, a place where people from all walks of life could come together over a shared meal. While fine dining restaurants were aspiring to European elegance, the diner was perfecting a uniquely American form of hospitality, informal, friendly, and accessible to all. It was, and remains, the soul food of the American highway. As the 20th century unfolded, a new and powerful cultural force emerged from the sun-drenched hills of California: Hollywood. The motion picture industry didn't just create stars, it created a new visual language of aspiration and glamour. The restaurant was one of its favorite sets. On screen, restaurants were transformed into magical spaces where pivotal life moments happened. They were where characters fell in love over a shared plate of spaghetti. They were where dramatic confrontations erupted. They were where gangsters made deals in shadowy back booths. And they were where dreams were either realized or dashed over a cup of coffee. Hollywood taught the world how to use a restaurant. Classic films from the 1930s and 40s provided a visual guidebook to romance and sophistication. A candlelit dinner was no longer just a meal. It was the universal symbol for a romantic rendezvous. The suave leading man, flawlessly ordering wine and navigating the menu, set a standard for male elegance. The supper clubs sold the idea of a night out as spectacle. Nightclubs and musicals showcased sweeping dance floors. Big bands fueled the glamour. Champagne, evening gowns, and breathtaking choreography sold the fantasy. Eating out was no longer just about food. It was about participating in a fantasy. This on-screen glamour had a direct impact on real-world dining. Restaurants in Los Angeles like the Brown Derby became famous not just for their food, but for their celebrity clientele. Chasins, Romanoffs, photographers camped outside. Gossip columnists reported on who was dining with whom. People flocked to these establishments for a chance to breathe the same air as their favorite movie stars. Cary Grant, Marilyn Monroe. The restaurant became a theater of celebrity. Table hopping to see and be seen became a new kind of social sport. This fusion of food and fame cemented the restaurant's status as a place of cultural importance. The influence was symbiotic. Hollywood romanticized the restaurant, and the restaurant industry capitalized on that romance. The idea of the destination restaurant, a place worth traveling to for its atmosphere and cachet, was born. Advertising for restaurants began to adopt the language of cinema, promising not just a meal, but an unforgettable evening or a starlit romance. Through the powerful lens of the camera, Hollywood embedded the restaurant deep within our collective imagination as a primary stage for life's dramas and comedies, a role it continues to play in our minds to this day. The post-World War II era in America was a period of unprecedented prosperity and explosive growth. A booming economy, the GI Bill, and a sense of unbridled optimism fueled the rise of a vast new landscape, the suburbs. As families moved out of the cities and into sprawling tracts of new homes, they took a new American obsession with them: the automobile. The car was not just transportation, it was a symbol of freedom and the key to this new suburban lifestyle. This car-centric culture completely reshaped the American restaurant industry, giving rise to two transformative innovations: the drive-in and the fast food chain. The drive-in restaurant was a perfect marriage of America's love for cars and convenience. Families could pile into their station wagons and enjoy a meal without ever leaving the comfort of their vehicle. Car hops, often on roller skates, would glide up to the window to take orders and return with trays laden with hamburgers, hot dogs, French fries, and milkshakes, which would be clipped to the car door. It was a novel and fun experience, turning the family car into a private dining booth. The drive-in was more than a restaurant. It was a social destination for teenagers, a place to hang out, listen to the radio, and see friends. At the same time, entrepreneurs like Ray Kroc, who franchised the McDonald's concept, were perfecting a new model of food service based on speed, consistency, and volume. The fast food chain was built on the principles of the factory assembly line. Every hamburger was cooked for the same amount of time, every serving of fries had the same amount of salt, and the layout of every kitchen was identical. This obsession with standardization ensured that a Big Mac and fries would taste exactly the same in California as it did in Illinois. It was the ultimate expression of Escoffier's brigade system, repurposed for the masses and the automobile age. This mid-century boom created a new landscape of dining, one dominated by glowing arches, familiar logos, and sprawling parking lots. It was a culture built for the highway, for the family on the go. While critics lamented the homogenization of food, the rise of the chain restaurant was a profoundly democratizing force. It made eating out more affordable and accessible than ever before, turning it from a special occasion into a casual, weekly, or even daily routine for millions of American families. It was the final step in making the restaurant a ubiquitous and integral part of everyday life. Section 1. The brain on ambiance. Why atmosphere is everything. We have traveled through centuries of dining history, from ancient hearths to glamorous nightclubs. But we now arrive at a more internal landscape: the human mind. Why does eating in a restaurant feel so different from eating at home, even if the food is identical? The answer lies in the complex interplay between our senses and our surroundings. We don't just taste with our tongues, our eyes, our ears, our memories. A restaurant is a masterfully orchestrated sensory experience. Every element, the lighting, the music, the scent in the air, is carefully designed to shape our perception of the meal. This is the science of ambiance. Consider the power of lighting. Low, warm light creates a sense of intimacy and relaxation, like that from a candle or a dim bulb. It softens features, it slows our pace, and it can even make food taste richer and more decadent. This is why fine dining establishments and romantic bistros are so often dimly lit. They are crafting a space that encourages us to linger, to connect, and to indulge. In contrast, bright, uniform lighting, common in fast food restaurants, signals speed and efficiency. It keeps us alert and focused, encouraging a faster turnover of tables. The light itself is sending a subconscious message about how we are meant to behave and feel in that space. Music and sound play an equally crucial role. The tempo and volume of background music influence how fast we eat and how much we spend. Slow, classical music can lead to a more leisurely meal and a higher bill. Patrons feel more relaxed and sophisticated. Loud, fast-paced pop music encourages quicker eating and quicker departure. Even the ambient sounds, the clinking of cutlery, the low hum of conversation, the sizzle from an open kitchen, all contribute to the overall atmosphere. These sounds can create a sense of vibrant energy or a feeling of peaceful seclusion. Ultimately, a restaurant's ambiance is a form of storytelling. It creates a context, a mood, a world for us to step into for a few hours. The rustic decor of a trattoria tells a story of Italian countryside tradition. The sleek, minimalist design of a sushi bar speaks of Japanese precision and tranquility. The bustling, noisy energy of a dim sum hall communicates communal celebration. When we choose a restaurant, we are not just choosing a menu, we are choosing which story we want to be a part of. We are seeking a restoration of the spirit, and that restoration begins long before the first plate of food ever arrives at our table. Section 2. The social animal. The psychology of eating together. Beyond the sensory inputs of our surroundings, there is a deeper, more primal reason why we love to eat out. We are fundamentally social animals. As we saw at the ancient hearth, sharing food is one of our oldest and most powerful bonding rituals. Modern psychology confirms this instinct. Studies have shown that eating with others, a practice known as commensality, releases oxytocin, the hormone of social bonding, trust, and generosity. When we share a meal, we are not just satisfying our hunger. We are biologically reinforcing our connections to the people we are with, strengthening friendships, family ties, and romantic partnerships. The restaurant provides the perfect neutral stage for this ritual to unfold. At home, the roles of host and guest can create a subtle power imbalance and a burden of labor. The restaurant removes this. It is a shared, neutral territory where everyone at the table is on equal footing, free from the obligations of cooking, serving, and cleaning. This allows us to focus entirely on the social interaction, on the conversation, and the connection. The simple act of sitting across from someone, making eye contact, and sharing the rhythm of a meal fosters a unique kind of intimacy that is difficult to replicate in any other setting. This social aspect even affects our perception of taste. Food genuinely seems to taste better when we eat it in good company, laughter, engaging conversation, and a sense of belonging. A simple plate of pasta can feel like a feast when shared with a loved one, while the most exquisite dish can taste bland if eaten in stressful or lonely circumstances. Restaurants, at their best, are facilitators of this joy, creating an environment where the pleasure of the food and the pleasure of the company become inextricably linked. This is why, when we think back on our most memorable meals, we often remember the people we were with more vividly than the food we ate. The first date, the anniversary celebration, the reunion with an old friend. The restaurant serves as the backdrop for these crucial scenes in the movie of our lives. It is a space deliberately designed to foster connection, to encourage us to put down our devices, to look across the table at another human being, and to engage in the simple, ancient, restorative act of conversation. In a world that can often feel isolating, the shared table of a restaurant remains a powerful antidote to loneliness. Section 4. The Global Kitchen Fusion, Authenticity, and the Modern Palate. The modern restaurant landscape is a direct reflection of a globalized world. The culinary boundaries that once separated nations have become wonderfully and deliciously blurred. Thanks to air travel, global trade, and the internet, ingredients, techniques, and ideas now flow freely across continents, creating a vibrant, dynamic, and ever-changing global kitchen. This has given rise to one of the defining culinary movements of our time: fusion cuisine. Chefs are no longer bound by the rigid traditions of a single country. They are free to draw inspiration from the entire world's pantry. This movement, which gained momentum in the 1980s and 90s, sees chefs combining elements from different culinary traditions to create something entirely new. A French technique might be applied to a Japanese ingredient, or a classic Italian dish might be reinvented with a hint of Mexican spice. Think of chefs like Wolfgang Puck popularizing Asian fusion pizzas in California, or Jean-Georges Vongerichten infusing his French cuisine with the bright, vibrant flavors of Thailand. This creative cross-pollination has led to some of the most exciting and innovative dishes of the last few decades, pushing the boundaries of what we consider French, Italian, or Chinese food. This trend has also sparked a fascinating debate about the nature of authenticity. As global flavors become more accessible, some chefs and diners have championed a return to hyper-traditional, authentic recipes, seeking to preserve culinary heritage in its purest form. Others argue that cuisine is, and has always been, in a constant state of evolution. They contend that the idea of a fixed, unchanging, authentic dish is a myth, and that fusion is simply the natural, accelerated continuation of a process of culinary exchange that has been happening for centuries. Is a ramen burger inauthentic, or is it simply the next chapter in the story of two beloved foods? For the modern diner, the result of this global exchange is an unprecedented world of choice. On a single city block, it is now possible to travel the world with your taste buds, from a Vietnamese PAO shop to a Peruvian ceviche bar, to an Ethiopian restaurant, where you eat with your hands. Our palates have become more adventurous, our culinary literacy has expanded, and our definition of a good meal has broadened. The modern restaurant is no longer just a taste of another place. It is often a taste of many places at once, a delicious reflection of our interconnected, multicultural world. If 19th century Paris gave us the first celebrity chefs, the late 20th and early 21st centuries launched them into the stratosphere. Fueled by the rise of food television, glossy magazines, and the internet, chefs transformed from skilled artisans into global superstars. Gordon Ramsay, Anthony Bourdain, Massimo Bottura became household names. Their personalities and philosophies became as famous as their food. They built media empires, wrote best-selling books, and commanded legions of devoted fans. The chef was no longer hidden in the kitchen. They became the main event, the charismatic star of the show. This cult of personality fundamentally changed the nature of fine dining. People make pilgrimages to restaurants not just for the food, but to experience the singular vision of a celebrated chef. The restaurant becomes an extension of the chef's identity, the meal a form of communion with a culinary icon. This placed immense pressure on chefs to be brilliant cooks, compelling storytellers, television personalities, and savvy business people. Their name becomes a brand, a line of cookware, a series of restaurants, and a carefully managed public image. At the highest echelons, one institution holds almost mythical power: the Michelin Guide. The chase for Michelin stars became an obsession for many chefs, a high-stakes game that can make or break a career. Earning a star, or the coveted 3 stars, brings instant international recognition, a flood of bookings, and a place in the pantheon of culinary gods. Losing a star can be a devastating blow, both financially and emotionally. This relentless pressure for perfection drives chefs to push creativity and technique, resulting in breathtakingly innovative food. But the star-chasing culture has faced criticism. Some say it encourages a narrow, Eurocentric, formal, expensive dining style, while overlooking other valid forms of culinary excellence. Others point to the mental and physical toll on chefs and staff, fostering burnout and extreme pressure. The world of the celebrity chef and the Michelin star is dazzling, sublime artistry and global acclaim. But it's also demanding and high pressure, shaping how we define the best. While Michelin-starred restaurants were reaching new heights of elaborate artistry, a powerful counter-movement was bubbling up from the ground, the street food revolution. For centuries, street food has been the daily fuel for billions of people around the world, a vibrant, democratic, and delicious part of urban life in cities like Bangkok and Mexico City. For a long time in the Western world, it was often dismissed as simple, cheap, or even unsanitary. But in recent decades, there has been a profound shift in perception. Chefs, food writers, and diners have begun to recognize the incredible skill, tradition, and flavor packed into these humble, portable meals. This revolution was fueled in part by food television, travel shows, like those hosted by Anthony Bourdain, which celebrated the visceral thrill of discovering a city through its street-side stalls and markets. It was also driven by a new generation of entrepreneurial chefs who saw the potential of the food truck. These mobile kitchens allowed chefs to launch a business with relatively low overhead, giving them the freedom to experiment with creative, high-quality, and highly specialized concepts. One truck might perfect the Korean taco. Another might focus on gourmet grilled cheese, creating a diverse and dynamic dining scene on wheels. The food truck craze brought the energy and excitement of a street market to cities that lacked a strong street food tradition. Food truck rallies and festivals became popular social events, where people could gather to sample a wide variety of cuisines in a casual, communal atmosphere. This movement broke down the formal barriers of the traditional restaurant. There were no reservations, no dress codes, no waiters. The interaction was direct and personal, between the person cooking the food and the person eating it, fostering a new kind of connection and appreciation. This new respect for street food has had a ripple effect across the entire dining landscape. Top chefs now draw inspiration from street food flavors, techniques, and some have even opened their own high-end street food concepts. Michelin has begun awarding stars to humble street food stalls in Singapore, Bangkok, a powerful validation of their culinary importance. The street food revolution has been a great equalizer, reminding us that incredible food is not defined by a high price tag or a white tablecloth. It has recentered our focus on what truly matters: a delicious, well-made dish, served with passion and pride. No force has reshaped the modern restaurant landscape more dramatically in the 21st century than technology. The internet and the smartphone have fundamentally changed how we discover, choose, experience, and consume restaurant food. The process begins with discovery. In the past, we might have relied on a newspaper critic or a friend's recommendation. Today, we turn to a vast ecosystem of online review platforms like Yelp, TripAdvisor, and Google Maps. The opinions of countless anonymous strangers now hold immense power, capable of elevating a new restaurant or sinking it with a barrage of negative ratings. This democratization of criticism has been a double-edged sword. On one hand, it has given a voice to the consumer and created a new level of transparency. Restaurants are held accountable for their food and service in a very public way. On the other hand, it has created a source of immense anxiety for restaurateurs who are at the mercy of often uninformed, subjective, or even malicious reviews. The online review has become a new, powerful, and often unpredictable force in the life of every restaurant, a constant digital report card that can change its fortunes overnight. Technology has also revolutionized the logistics of dining out. Online reservation systems have largely replaced the phone call, allowing us to book a table with a few taps on a screen. This has streamlined the process for both diners and restaurants, but it has also created a new kind of digital velvet rope, with prime-time slots at popular restaurants being snapped up months in advance by savvy users or automated bots. And of course, the rise of third-party delivery apps has brought the restaurant directly into our living rooms, creating a massive new revenue stream, but also introducing a host of new challenges, from high commission fees to quality control issues. Finally, social media, particularly Instagram, has turned every diner into a potential food photographer and marketer. The visual appeal of a dish is now more important than ever, with chefs designing plates specifically to be Instagrammable. A viral photo of a spectacular-looking dessert or a brightly colored cocktail can drive hundreds of customers to a restaurant, a phenomenon known as eating with your eyes. This digital dining room has added another layer of performance to the restaurant experience, transforming the meal into content to be captured, curated, and shared with the world, for better or for worse. Section 8. The Conscious Table: Sustainability and the Future of Food. As we look toward the future of dining, a growing sense of consciousness is reshaping the industry. Spurred by climate change, resource depletion, and ethical labor practices, chefs and diners alike are beginning to ask difficult questions about where their food comes from and what its true cost is. This has given rise to the Conscious Table, a new philosophy of dining that prioritizes sustainability, ethical sourcing, and minimizing waste, building upon the foundations laid by the counterculture kitchens of the 1970s. This movement manifests in many ways. The farm-to-table concept has evolved into a deeper commitment to regenerative agriculture and supporting local food systems. Chefs are increasingly practicing root-to-stem or nose-to-tail cooking, finding creative ways to use every part of a vegetable or an animal to combat the massive problem of food waste in the restaurant industry. Some restaurants are going even further, implementing composting programs, eliminating single-use plastics, and designing their operations to be carbon neutral. Sustainability is no longer a niche concern. It is becoming a central pillar of culinary excellence. This consciousness extends beyond environmental concerns to social and ethical ones. There is a growing awareness of the often brutal working conditions within the restaurant industry, leading to calls for better pay, more reasonable hours, and a healthier kitchen culture that moves away from the old, high-pressure brigade system. Diners are also becoming more interested in the ethics of their food choices, from sourcing fair trade coffee to ensuring that seafood is sustainably harvested. The story behind the food, the welfare of the animal, the livelihood of the farmer, the well-being of the kitchen staff, is becoming an integral part of the meal itself. This growing movement suggests that the future of the restaurant is not just about new flavors or new technologies. It is about a deeper sense of responsibility. It is about understanding that a restaurant is part of a complex web that connects the diner to the chef to the farmer, and the farmer to the earth. The restaurant of the future will likely be one that is not only delicious and innovative but also thoughtful, ethical, and sustainable. It will be a place that continues to fulfill our ancient need for restoration, but will aim to restore not just our own spirits, but also the communities and the planet that make the meal possible. Section 1. The Enduring Hearth. A reflection on our journey. Our journey together, which began in the flickering light of an ancient hearth, now draws to a close. We have traveled across millennia and continents, tracing the remarkable evolution of a single powerful idea: the public table. We have seen how the simple, primal act of sharing food has been shaped and reshaped by the grand forces of history: revolution, migration, technology, and art. We have moved from the functional thermopolia of Rome to the restorative broth houses of Paris, to the glamorous dining cars of the Gilded Age, to the gleaming chrome diners of the American highway. Each stop on our journey has revealed another facet of why we are so irresistibly drawn to the act of eating out. This story, we have discovered, is not a simple linear progression. It is a rich and complex tapestry, woven from countless threads of human need and ingenuity. It is the story of necessity, of travelers on the Silk Road seeking refuge in a caravanserai, and of factory workers in industrial cities needing a quick, hot meal. It is also a story of aspiration, of a rising middle class in post-revolutionary France eager for a taste of aristocratic elegance, and of Hollywood starlets turning a simple dinner into a spectacle of glamour. The restaurant has been, at various times, a sanctuary, a stage, a laboratory, and a community center, constantly adapting to serve our ever-changing desires. Through it all, a single, unifying theme has remained constant. From the sacred feasts in ancient temples to the lively debates in a Viennese cafe, The act of gathering for a meal has always been about more than just the food. It has been about connection to our gods, to our communities, to our traditions, and to each other. The restaurant, in all its myriad forms, is the modern inheritor of this ancient tradition. It is the enduring hearth around which we, as a global community of strangers, now gather. It provides a space for the rituals that define our lives, from the quiet romance of a first date to the joyous celebration of a family milestone. As we reflect on this long and flavorful history, we see that the restaurant is one of our most human inventions. It is a testament to our social nature, our endless curiosity, and our shared pursuit of pleasure and comfort. It is an institution built on the simple but profound premise that a meal, when shared, can nourish more than just the body. It can restore the spirit, forge a bond, and create a memory that lasts a lifetime. This is the fundamental truth we have uncovered, a truth that has echoed from the earliest communal fires and continues to resonate in every bustling dining room today. You know, it's kind of remarkable. Section 4. The ever-evolving table. Adaptation as tradition. If there is one tradition that defines the history of the restaurant, it is the tradition of constant adaptation. The public table has never been a static institution. It is a living, breathing entity that is perpetually evolving in response to the changing world around it. We have seen how it has been radically reshaped by social revolutions, by new technologies like the railway and the automobile, and by shifting cultural currents. This capacity for change is the secret to its enduring success. The restaurant survives and thrives because it is a master of reinvention, always finding new ways to meet our timeless needs. Today, the forces of change are as powerful as ever. We are living through a digital revolution that has transformed how we find, book, review, and consume restaurant meals. The smartphone has become our maître d', our critic, and our delivery driver, adding new layers of convenience and complexity to the dining experience. Social media has turned every meal into a potential photo opportunity, placing a new premium on visual presentation. These technologies are fundamentally altering the relationship between the diner and the restaurant, creating new challenges and new opportunities for connection in a digitally mediated world. Simultaneously, we face the profound challenge of climate change, which is forcing a deep reckoning within the culinary world. The conscious table is no longer a niche movement, it is becoming a central concern. Chefs and restaurateurs are increasingly recognized as key players in creating a more sustainable food system. They are adapting their menus to reflect seasonality, reducing waste with innovative root-to-stem cooking, and forging closer ties with local, regenerative farms. The restaurant of the future will likely be judged not only on the quality of its food, but on the quality of its conscience, its ability to provide pleasure in a way that is responsible and restorative for our planet. This constant evolution ensures that the story of the restaurant is never finished. It is a story that is being written every night in kitchens and dining rooms around the world. As our social habits shift, as our environmental consciousness grows, and as new technologies emerge, the restaurant will continue to adapt. It will find new ways to bring us together, new flavors to delight us, and new stories to tell. The one thing we can be certain of is that the public table will continue to be a dynamic and essential space, a place where we process and respond to the great questions of our time, one meal at a time. The future of dining will undoubtedly bring innovations we can scarcely imagine. Perhaps even more sophisticated technology, hyper-personalized nutrition, or new and sustainable sources of protein. But whatever form it takes, its core purpose will remain the same. The future of dining will still be about the sizzle of a pan, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversation, and the shared smile across a table. It will still be about the desire to gather together, to break bread, and to feel, for a moment, perfectly restored. This is the enduring power of the restaurant. It is not merely a place we go to eat, it is a place we go to live. It is a cornerstone of our communities and a repository of our memories. And so, the next time you walk through the doors of a restaurant, pause and consider the centuries of history and human ingenuity behind that simple, hopeful invitation. Sit down, relax, be fed. If you like this video, please like and share. Plus, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and we will continue to create for as long as we have stories to share and an appetite for life. Thank you for watching.